Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. In tonight's episode, I am going to show you how to paint a dog's eye in watercolor. And it's going to be a quick study. The reason why I want to focus on the eye of the dog is because I've found in all the times I've done a pet portrait that if you don't get the eye right, you'll be really disappointed in the result. And I think that for a lot of beginners, that's where they're making their most mistakes because they have the eye wrong. And so I learned that mistake a long time ago and I got it wrong for a long time. So I'm here to show you my tricks in watercolor. So usually I do my pet portraits in pastel, but I am kind of learning some watercolor techniques. If you have any questions, feel free to comment and subscribe to my channel. And also thumbs up my videos so that I know what you're liking and what you're not liking. And yeah, so tonight will be very quick, and so let's get started.
All right, so we're here in the studio, and I just want to kind of run through the supplies I'm going to use. So this is the drawing that I did. It's just a quick sketch of a dog's eye, and I will show you the dog's eye that I am going to be drawing. This is just a reference photo from online. Okay, and it's just a dog's eye. I think this is a dachshund. And so that's the reference photo we'll be using. If you notice that this eye is a lot bigger than the eye on the screen. So that's actually good. I don't have to do as much detail when it's kind of like that. So that's going to be really good. And just to give you an example of how this eye, I'm planning on doing it, is going to be similar to this eye. I did this one last week, and you know, for watercolor, it's pretty realistic. You can tell that it's an eye from a dog. It's got some realism here in the pupil and some depth with the different coloring, especially dog's eyes have a retina that's a little bluish green. That's kind of why you can see a dog's eye show up in that really pretty teal turquoise color in the dark. But anyways, this is kind of the idea of what I'm going to be doing tonight. I did that last week. It turned out really good, and I just decided I wanted to have more practice with that. So my colors I'm going to use, this is my pan set, and it's just kind of a mixture of Winsor and Newton Cotmans and Spearer Farben. And if you haven't heard of that brand, you can find them on Amazon. I think they're out of Texas, although I'm not sure. I think they make their paints in Asia somewhere, but this is the company. So this is Spearer Farben, and again, they're really inexpensive. They're on Amazon, and they have great customer service. And the other thing I want to add about them is that they will give you their light fastness ratings, and I think that they have really good quality control. That's what I was gathering from some conversation I had with the owner, or you know, who's ever the customer service representative. So anyways, it's a really good brand, and so I recommend them. I'm not sure, they call themselves artist grade, but, or yeah, artist grade, professional grade, but you know, I think they have a really good pricing. That's kind of more of a student grade pricing. So, you know, you can make up your mind on that, but I do like the set. So this is just a mixture of that and Winsor Newton Cotman. And the brushes I'm going to use, I'm not married to any particular brand of brushes. So these ones I just got online on Amazon, but they work really well. So I'm going to use a 4 flat brush today, maybe. I have a couple of small liner brushes. Again, another flat brush. I like flat brushes. This one is a round brush. It's a 3-0, so that's a really small one. And for my bigger brush strokes kind of around the eye, for like the big fur, this is going to be a 7 round. Okay, so I'll kind of mention the colors that I use and the brush size as I'm going along. And of course I have my cup of water, and I just want to see if I can show you guys the water. See that yellow, or I'm sorry, this purple disc down at the bottom? This is actually a suction cup brush cleaner. I got it at Blick for only a few dollars. They are fantastic. I love them. You just swish your brush in there and it kind of cleans it for you. And I'm not planning on doing any mixing today. So I want to keep this really simple. This is just for practice. It's just fun, nothing fancy, and we are going to get going. So I am going to start kind of on the inside and focus on the pupil first, and then I'm going to move my way outside to the really loose part. So the pupil has a white spot, and these white spots are important if you want to get a really good realistic looking eye. However, you have to be careful because you don't want them to be too white, because then they look not so realistic. So what I'm going to do, and I'm kind of just making this up as I go along a little ways, is I am going to start with Payne's Gray, and I'm going to make this part and this part more on the gray side, and then I can build up a little bit of color as I need to, but I want to keep this this spot and this spot very white, but not too white. So I am going to add a little bit of gray. So I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So I'm just going to use one of my small flat brushes, and Payne's Gray is a great color, but it is very dark, so I wouldn't want to just slosh it right on the paper. So this is how it comes out. You know, that's really dark. I want to dilute it, so I want to dilute it even more than that. And this ceramic mixing tray I got is really good. I got that on Amazon too. A lot of Amazon going on at my house. It's really hard for me to get out and shop because I've got a bunch of little kids, so that's my excuse for using Amazon. I really like them though. All right, so I'm starting here, and this is just a touch gray. It's, you know, even on the bluish side, it's a cool gray, and I can go out of the box a little bit because this part is going to be darker, so it will cover up this thing that I did. But anyways, I'm going to go with the gray on that, and then up here I'm also going to make gray. Now this part that I'm doing here at the top isn't going to stay gray. That's going to have some other colors kind of mixed in, I think. But again, I'm just going with the flow. I'm new to doing watercolor animals. I've been doing watercolor flowers, and I like lettering in watercolor, but I think my background in other animal portraits kind of gives me a little bit of a license to, you know, have a leg up in the watercolor world when it comes to animals. But you know, I still make crummy art sometimes too, you know, just because I've done a couple of really nice things and I've sold a bit, that doesn't mean that everything that I come out is like great. I did a bird last, how long ago was that bird? A few months ago. It was so bad. I even posted it on Facebook just to let everybody know that even though artists have this reputation that everything they make is gorgeous, well, it's not always. Okay, so I have just made this really light, and again, this will get darkened a little bit as I go. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of undiluted gray, and I'm going to just pepper in some spots up at the top. Not anything crazy, but just enough where it'll bleed a little bit into some areas and just not look so flat. Now, if you notice, I'm adding a bit of water, and what that will do is it will cause blooms. Blooms are kind of these areas where water is spread out, and they've almost formed like a snowflake sort of pattern. And a lot of times it's not the color, it's almost like a whitish snowflake. I can't really explain it. I know you guys have all seen it though. Not a lot of people I don't particularly like having blooms in my art. Some people love blooms. They're good to know when to control them. They're not easy to control all the time, but I'm trying to control them a little bit. And what I'm also trying to do is have some areas dark and some areas light, and you know, we're just going with the flow. I don't, you know, this is just practice, so I'm not taking it too seriously. You know, obviously I want it to be good, but that's the fun thing about practice, is that it doesn't really have to be good. It just has to be. See, I don't know why I just did that, because this is kind of an area I really wanted to preserve and not make too dark. And without even thinking, I kind of went in on the dark side here. So when that happens, you can pull some of the watercolor up with, I'm going to just use like a paper towel here. This is not a paper towel at all, actually, it's just a cloth. But I can absorb some of that, and that's fine. It actually is kind of on the dark side in the picture, but I'm just going to go, I don't want it to be too flat, and it's probably a little bit on the darker side down here, so I'll add just a little bit of pigment, and that will spread out in a natural way. Okay, so now you'll see here in the areas that are darker, they've kind of come up in this strange sort of way. It's just kind of how the water settled, and it looks a little rigid, but that's actually how the shadow looks in the original picture. So I know you can't really see it that good, but it's a little rigid down here. So this is pretty true to the picture. What I want to do next is, what do I want to do next? This is going to be all different shades of darker gray, and I'm even going to put some blue in there. How did I do the last one? The last one came out good. I actually threw in some gray. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just finish this eye out, make it kind of dark, and then add some fun colors. Again, I have no idea how this is going to come out. That's what I like about, well, that's not true. I don't always like when that happens. I like to be in control and know what to expect, but this is kind of fun doing it for this video. You know, you have to be a little experimental when you're painting. And this kind of goes into this a little bit. So because this is wet, it's going to spread out a little bit this way, and that's fine. Again, we can be a little bit not so rigid here. And if you'll remember in that first one that I did of the other dog's eye, it's realistic in the way that you can tell it's a dog eye, but it's not so realistic where, you know, everything is absolutely perfect. So, you know, I'm careful not to always use the word realistic or realism, because some people's paintings come out like a photograph. And I know I've talked about that before. I have some of my drawings that have come close to looking like photographs, but I don't always want that look. I want them to look like, you know, a little bit of painted. Because what I think sometimes happens is sometimes artists make these paintings that are so real that people just kind of pass them by thinking that it's a photograph without realizing, oh my goodness, somebody painted that. So I'm going in here and adding a little bit of black. And then I'm going to swoop this down. And I don't want it to be too dark because it's not that dark down here in the picture. And just kind of going with the flow, literally. Happy, 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 easy, easy. This should be fun. Now, what sort of black am I using, do you ask? This is lamp black. And I like lamp black as opposed to ivory because I think it's just a little bit more black, whereas ivory black is kind of on the transparent side. And if you're looking for a good, dark, solid black, lamp black is the one, in my opinion, to use. But the Winsor Cotman pans come with one of each, so you get to choose your preference. All right. So that's looking good. Do you see this kind of area here where it looks like it's bloomed out? That's a bloom. So I'm going to decide whether I like that bloom. I'm going to look at the picture, and I don't like that bloom because this is actually where it starts getting pretty black. So I'm going to just take some black and mix it with my Payne's gray and just get more on the black side over here. All right, so that's looking pretty good. And I'm going to try to put a little bit more pigment in this water so that if you can, when it's a high, all right, how am I going to word this? Okay, when the ratio is more water and less pigment, that's when you end up getting kind of a bloomy type look. But when it's more paint and less water, that's where you stop seeing the bloom. So if you feel like, uh-oh, I just put way too much of a watery mixture, don't worry, just go in with your brush, give it a big dip into the pan or the tube or however your paint comes, and just get more pigment into the water kind of before it settles down anywhere. So that's my advice. It's not really a big deal. You can fix a bloom once you can recognize it's going to get bloomy, if that makes sense. So the other thing is I want to kind of go in here with some really dark, which I just, okay. This is taking a turn for the worse here. Now this part of the eye, sorry for shaking the camera, this part of the eye here is kind of, should have a shadow on it because of the eyelid kind of making a shadow, casting a shadow down. And pardon me, but I have to move this in order to get a good straight line here. All right, so that looks okay. I'm gonna just lighten this a little bit, and then I'm gonna bring some of this pigment back in here where it's a little darker than how I originally had it, but I don't want to get too close to this big black strip or it's going to really start bleeding, but I'll show you kind of how that works. So if I get really close here, it'll start bleeding in, but that's actually looking okay. Now the other thing you can do is if you realized you went too dark, you can always re-wet the surface, and that sometimes will allow you to just pull up a little color that may have gotten a little bit much. Now I just put some cerulean on here just to kind of give it some interest, I guess. Eyes, like I mentioned, of a dog, they all have a little bit of blue because their retinas are blue, and that's okay. If my memory serves me, that has some sort of reflective powers for like seeing better at night. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember in 6th grade we dissected sheep eyes, and they had a really, really blue retina. And that's what my teacher, Mr. C, told me, that it was for seeing at night. You know, I have a degree in biology. I should know, but I just don't. What do I know? Okay. I'm going to just bring this down. And now I'm not so concerned about being perfect here. It's just more about, in my opinion, like this is good. The picture shows that you can see a little bit of a darker area where we would kind of know as a pupil, and it comes out a little bit up on top here. So I'm going to just add some water and allow that to spread naturally. And so this is one way you can control the spread a little bit, is you can just kind of add water where you want it to go out, and then stop adding water once you feel like it's in a good spot. So this is looking pretty interestingly. I'm definitely spending a lot more time than I expected here on the pupil, but you know, I think it's important to just kind of take your time. And so I am almost ready to move on though. I'm going to add a little bit more black kind of over in this. And this is the black that I did right here, came out really dark, and it's right out of the tube. So, or not the tube. I've been using tubes too. I use tubes sometimes, and then I use pans in other times. It's really just all about preference. So I'm going to move this up just a little ways. And just give this more of a painterly look here. All right, now the lines here are super, super straight. So I'm going to take a flat brush, and this is a size 2, so it's really, really thin. And I'm going to just go in and I'm going to straighten up these lines just a touch, just because the picture has really straight lines here, and that's just a reflection of light, so it should be nice and straight. But now I've kind of darkened up just the kind of the perimeter there, so I have to make it blend in a little bit more naturally, and I do that by just adding a little more, and then I'm going to add just a small amount of water to let it blend a little bit more nicely. Now the other thing here is that in the picture, it actually travels up. The black actually travels up into this white spot a little bit. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just make a couple of lines here, and then I'll go in with a little bit of the Payne's Gray and fill it in. that looks a little bit just more natural to how the picture looks. All right. And just in these areas where I'm seeing some lines and some choppiness, I'm just breaking it up with a little bit of water. And this is just how I do it. This is not, you can take some of these ideas. Most people don't do it this way. Okay, so I'm going to stop here, and I can always go back and kind of fix this stuff if I feel like I want to, but you know, it might be okay the way it is. I would just like things to have blended a little bit more smoothly in some areas, but I'll be honest, watercolor doesn't do that as easily as other mediums. So by default of using watercolor, you're already introducing some unknown variables, I feel like. I'm gonna just try to darken that area up a little bit. And again, I've done it a little bit. All right, I feel like I could keep fixing this for a while and never be satisfied, so I'm gonna stop, and I can always kind of come back and make decisions later. But next, I am going to focus on this part. So this is the part I would call the iris, and this dog has a nice black iris that goes, or I'm sorry, a nice brownish umber colored eye. Now all I've used so far is blue, a little bit of cerulean, lamp black, and gray, and I told you that I was going to use some blue, and I haven't done that. So what I'm going to do now is this is going to be crazy, but I'm going to throw some phthalo blue, which is like very, very, very bright blue, and I'm going to just dot it in here a little bit, and I'm going to use a bigger brush just to really dollop it in. And I believe that this phthalo blue is going to just add a little bit more realism to the eye, because any dog owner knows that they've got that pretty blue in their eye. So I said I was going to do it, and then I forgot. So before I move on, I just want to do that. All right. So let me just move the paper around so you can really see what I've done. I don't know if you can see that, but it's not, you know, just by adding some blue gives it some interest and some depth, okay? I hope you can see that, because I am having a hard time seeing that. But anyways, there's blue in there, and blue's important. Okay, moving on. Let's get to that pretty brown color. And I like to think that my eyes are that pretty, but I don't think they are. I think that they're pretty, but really they're just not as pretty. But that's okay. So I am going to take, not this brush, but my other flat brush, this one, my flat brush 2, and I'm going to get some really good lamp black on there. And I'm going to go pretty heavy on the black, on the pigment, and not so heavy on the water, because I really want to get a nice thick line in there. So I'm going to just twist it in a way that I can make that happen more nicely. It's hard to do this on camera. Okay. Now I don't, as much as I am making you feel like it has to be perfect, it actually doesn't, because I'm going to be blending this upward. And I'll explain that shortly, but I just want to have, I don't want it to bleed into the white of the eye, that is. Although I actually am going to have it be bleeding a little bit in there, but not right now. So we've got a nice curved line coming in. All right. So this actually comes up all the way up there. This is like surgical precision here, although it doesn't really need to be. So I need to just chill out and enjoy the painting process here. All right, so that's nice and big. Big, thick. And I'm also going to bring it up a ways here. Okay. And that's going to meet all the way. I actually need to extend it. Okay, and the reason why I'm going to extend it is because it's actually darker. The dog's eye, this black line, is darker up at the top. So I'm just basically making a big solid black loop. Not a circle, just a loop. Following the outline of that eye. All right, there we go. So that looks pretty good so far. Okay, so the next thing I need to focus on is that really pretty brownish color. So the color, I would say, is like two-toned. It starts out, as I'm moving outward this way, it starts as like a burnt umber, and then it goes to like a sepia. So I'm going to start with the burnt umber. And I want to really make sure that I've cleaned my brush so that I don't get any black where I don't want black. All right, so I'm going to start bringing this down. And I'm going to make sure I'm touching what I'm calling the pupil. And I'll show you one thing that I'm going to do, which is a little bit different. Let me just get in here. So as you'll see, there's like a really kind of faded part, okay? And that's just from the flash of the camera, and the reflection is kind of light. But I need that lightness to extend into the this part of the iris too. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just take some water and kind of get it out of here. So you're probably saying, oh, well, why didn't I just start very lightly here? I could have done that too. Okay, so that's going to be really nice. I don't like how there's kind of a line of separation here, so I'm going to try to get it out. But if it's proving too difficult, then I won't. Then I'll stop in my tracks, but looks like it'll be fine. All right, now I've really lightened it up there, so I'm going to just kind of brush some of this out. Okay, and I'm going to just continue with the burnt umber, continue going downward. Whoa, I just added way too much water. So when that happens, just start spreading it around. Spread, spread, spread. And it's much redder over here, so I'm gonna add more of the pigment. And again, this is just burnt umber. All right, I don't mean for that to be so squiggly. Just add a little bit more too. Okay. So now one thing you may have noticed about your own dog is that the pupil and the iris don't really have a hard defined edge. So for that reason, we don't want a hard defined edge in our dog either. So I'm going to just add a little bit of gray, a little bit of more Payne's gray down here. And then right next to that, I'm going to add a little bit of the burnt umber. And I'm going to just pray that they start bleeding into each other a little bit. Okay? And if they don't, we can definitely do some manipulating. And I have a feeling I'm going to have to show you that. So in order to do that, I'm just going to carefully kind of scrub the black down a little bit. Or I just have to kind of go up into the black so that it's, you know, more blendy and less of a, you know, a line. I'm also going to take some of the Payne's gray and I'm going to just drop it into the burnt umber. And that again will just suggest that the two are blending into each other more naturally instead of having this hard defined line. Okay, so I'm going to do that throughout this whole area, because again, we want to make sure that we don't have any hard edges here, since that's not the way the dog's anatomy works. Now I am going to be careful in this area because it's a little bit of a funny, fudge, I just put way too much water on there. So when that happens, don't fear, just soak it up, okay? And then here I'm going to just kind of get more of that blackish down. And I think I'm gonna, this is just calling for more Just dropping in more pigment. Dropping in more pigment. There's nothing wrong with that. Watercolors, you know, when you're doing this sort of thing, it takes some time. If art could be, you know, mastered and done in like a couple of minutes, then everyone would be doing it. But it takes time and patience, and that's what a lot of people don't have, or they get really discouraged quickly, and that can happen too. All right, so I've done a little bit of a better job just kind of blending out some of the burnt umber into the retina, but I've got to do, not the retina, the pupil, oh my goodness. All right, I'm gonna just go in with some really dark brown, and this is sepia. And I'm even gonna put some gray in it while it's wet, because that's part of the shadow here. And the shadow kind of extends up. So again, I'm gonna just go in with some black to show that darkness. All right, so I'm gonna go with the sepia. And I'm gonna just kind of bleed it into the burnt umber. I'm gonna bleed it in by just tickling it in with a little bit of water. And I'm going to keep doing that all the way up the eye. Maybe I should be using a bigger brush. Yeah, I'm going to switch to my 7 and get a big swatch of the sepia. Got to be careful here because I don't really want it going all the way up. Okay, so now that I've got a nice sepia in there, I'm going to go back in with my burnt umber. Or, how about this? I'm going to use burnt sienna. No, even better, I'm going to use Indian red. And I'm going to just get it right in there. And while it's still wet, that's just another color to kind of bleed in. And maybe I wish I didn't use the Indian red because it is a little bit more vibrant than what I'm going for here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wet my brush and sweep some of it out of there. Sweep some of it out. But, I mean, it was a good idea. It wasn't terrible. So now I'm going to go in with some burnt sienna and just kind of let the two get married a little bit. Okay, so burnt sienna, marry it up. And I can bring that all the way down to the sepia and the black. And I really only want to go till this area here, because like I said, this is part of this kind of dullish area, but it looks a little funny with nothing. So I'm going to go in with raw umber, and I'll just kind of let the two come together a little bit. I just want to show that this is part of that kind of reflection. But I feel like I'm not doing a really good job of that. But either way, I mean, the important part here is that we don't have a straight, you know, line here, and it's just kind of more married in together, blended out. So I'm going to just take this and keep blending. Keep blending. Just keep blending, just keep blending, 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 blending. All right, that looks better. It's not as hard of a line anymore, although you do need to make sure that there is a little bit of a line. So let me just kind of show you how that is looking so far. Looks pretty good. I've lost my photo here. Okay, so the next part is getting this white. Now we call it the white of the eye, but it's very much not pure white, it's other colors. And I'm looking at this guy, and he's a little bluish gray. So I'm going to take Payne's Gray, and I'm going to take Cerulean, and I'm going to really yeah, dilute it down. And this looks really good. It's just, you know, bluish whitish enough to know that it's doing something here. You know, you don't want to leave it stark white because nobody's eye is stark white like that. I am switching brushes though to just to cover a bigger area. And it's maybe a little bit more blue than I want. Whoop. All right, see what happened there? Whoops, I am starting to get really bad here. Okay, so now it's a little bit too blue. And we can fix that, yes we can. But what's happening here is I was going really close to this black where it wasn't so dry, and it's just kind of melded its way into the white of the eye. So that's actually what we want, because the picture shows that there's some mixing a little bit of the black, seems to come down a little. So this is actually kind of more of what we want. So I'm going to just tickle it on a little bit more everywhere. I know it feels weird when I say tickle it in, but you got to just reactivate a little bit of the paint. Okay, and allow it to come down. Okay, so I'm going to just go like that. All right, now I'm going to let that settle in a little bit. And this has gotten dark, too dark for my liking. So I'm going to re-wet the whole thing. And once it's wet, I'm going to go in with a clean wet brush, or sorry, a clean dry brush, and just pull some of it out. What I can also do too is just boop, go like that. Boop, try to absorb some of the reactivated watercolor. Okay. Now I didn't make it, you know, really like so white or so dark where it looks awful. So it's not the end of the world if I can't get it up. It's just more than what I expected. It just all happened so fast. Okay. What I am going to do is I'm going to refill my water, or I'm going to get new water. So I'll be back in a mo. That's better. So I'm looking back at this first eye that I did that came out really well, and that one actually has a pretty dark white too. So I'm not going to worry too much about this one. I'll try one more time, just reactivating a little bit and see if I can get some more of that up. So this is clean water now. And then I'm going to get all the water out of the brush and just see if I can pull out. I mean, it's working a little bit. But I don't want to scrub too hard either, because this paper is not the best quality. So if I keep scrubbing, what's going to happen is it will eventually what'll it do? It'll eventually start like breaking apart a little bit, and I don't want that either. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just come down here with I'm doing like way too much here. All right, I'm going to just come a little bit down with the Payne's Gray. Okay. And when that dries a little bit, I'm going to just do a little bit of more tickling in to give it a little bit more of that bled in look. And the reason why I want to do that is that if I can create some more darkness up here, it won't make this look so dark and weird. Not that it does, but you know. Anyway, we can help this poor dog. So I do have to wait a minute, and in the meantime, I am going to focus on the outside of the eye. Now the outside of the eye is a little bit of a strange color. It's like a grayish, bluish purple. So I am going to be mixing some sort of concoction up for that. And let's see, I'm just waiting for this to dry a little bit. But I don't want to go too crazy here. And I can just kind of keep adding water until I don't want it to be bleeding out anymore. I'm going to be careful here because this is going to bleed out a lot. As you can see, there's just a lot of pigment here. And I'm going to just let it, I'm going to give it a little bit more water and let it bleed out just a little ways over here. And this is how you can kind of create a subtle bleeding effect and be able to control it, as opposed to putting down a big blob of water and then it's out of control. So this looks pretty good, and I'm not going to do any more because I can see myself going a little crazy there. So I'm just adding a little bit of interest there. All right, now on to this. So this is kind of, again, a very strange color. It's like a bluish, grayish purple. So I'm going to just add some dioxazine purple to the Payne's Gray that I've already laid down, and a touch of indigo, which I love that color. And I have created this color pretty well. It seems like a strange color for a dog's eye, but this is truthfully the color, guys. So I'm gonna just go around. And this part is it's a little darker over here, and it's darker brown. So I'm going to be doing sepia, and not just sepia, but sepia and Payne's gray, and just kind of add that a little bit. Add some more of the some sepia and some more of this Payne's gray, because this is really dark. Okay. Alright, and then I'm going to just do that mixture of gray and purple and blue up here. And this is where I can start getting a little bit looser, because it was really the eye that I wanted to make the most realistic. Anything after that is kind of fun and artsy and loose, and I can be a little bit more flexible there. I just wanted to make sure that the eye was done, you know, more on point to what the eye looks like, because as I mentioned in the intro here, it's the eye that you want to get right, and anything else can be kind of played with a little bit. But if you're going for something that, you know, really captures the spirit of the animal, then my suggestion is to make sure you get that eye right. And the eye takes time. I mean, there are dogs that I do, and you know, the dog, like the fur and all of that, takes, you know, an hour and a half, and the eyes alone, which is like the smallest part of the whole picture, takes, you know, the longest amount of time. So you know, we can start playing around a little bit here. So I'm gonna go ahead and do some lighter. This is a color am I going to put in here? I'm actually going to put Naples yellow in here, which isn't a color that comes with the sets normally, but it's one of my favorite colors, and it's so pretty. And this just kind of shows the under fur, I guess, like right under the eye. There's just some light fur, and I'm going to just show that with the Naples, and I can just have fun here and just do these kind of artistic swoops. And I'm going to do a couple more, bring them out, bring them out, bring them out. All right, that looks pretty good. So I'm going to be going over that with a darker color, but I just want to let that dry so that when I add the darker color, it's not going to bleed all over the place. So that's my my reasoning for letting that dry. And then up above, it's more brownish. I've got a little bit of the that light color here. And one thing that I would recommend if you're gonna be, you know, serious about doing dog pictures or cat or whatever animals, I would recommend finding a guide that helps you understand the direction of the hairs, because the hair starts out in this direction, or kind of starts here, and then as you go up, it's going in this direction, and as you go down, it's going this direction. But for every different part of the face, the nose, like the muzzle, the sides of the face, the cheeks, around the mouth, the forehead, they have so many different directions, and it's really important that you get all of the directions kind of right. So that's my suggestion. Now I'm gonna go in with some light red. I'm gonna mix it a little bit with, I told you I wasn't gonna mix, and here I am mixing, but you know, this isn't a perfect palette, so I do have to do a little bit of mixing, but I'm gonna just kind of go in with some red. And I gotta do some darks down here. So I'm using my 7, this is my 7 round. I'm gonna go in with really darks, and that's sepia, and I'm gonna use some Payne's gray. That's probably too dark, but what the heck. All right. And I'm gonna just kind of sweep this way. Oh. Just because there was some, you know, really thinner hairs here. And, you know, there's this part right here that's kind of a dark, kind of a grayish. And then, you know, you can just have fun a little bit here. And I'm going to get back into that brown and just like this part of the dog right here, its hair is actually like this. And so you can get a little creative with the colorings. And this part is the nose, and it goes like this. But then it kind of starts coming up here and over. So when I tell you that the dog's hair shapes and directions are really complicated, believe me, they will drive you to drink if you're not careful. It gets really confusing, and you know, it just takes a lot of practice. But they have guides, I've seen them, and I've actually downloaded them before. They're on like Pinterest and, you know, and probably some other places, but you know, I recommend just kind of having one and printing it out and keeping it in your studio or wherever you do your work, and you know, that will be a really good guide for you. So I'm just getting like really loose here. I'm gonna go in some, this is just some black and some Payne's gray, and I'm just adding some, you know, more detailed hairs, you know, which you can or you don't have to do. I'm just doing it to show you some different options. This isn't, you know, a piece I'm going to be working on or selling or anything like that. So, you know, you got to do that every once in a while. You've got to just, you know, take a piece of paper and think, all right, this paper is getting thrown away. Let's just have fun and practice. And, you know, that will allow you to be a little bit looser, I think, with your painting, if you just already plan on throwing it away. And then, you know, sometimes it'll surprise you, and then those are the things that end up being really nice. So, and then you don't have to throw it away. But it's up to you. I throw away stuff all the time, and it's actually sometimes a relief to throw away. because it's letting go, and it's not just letting go of the physical paper, but it's letting go of this notion that everything has to be perfect all the time. So I recommend throwing away just for your own mental health. And I'm gonna go in here with a little bit of darker blue. And it's not really like this in the picture, but I just felt like I wanted to do something there. And I did. And that's okay. So I'm gonna just let that go in here. And you know, I didn't do, what didn't I do? I didn't do like, you know, every hair or anything like that. I'm just having fun. And you got to do that every once in a while. So anyways, that's my demonstration for how to make an eye in watercolor. And I apologize if I made you think it was going to be super realistic. It's just making more of a, you know, more natural and realism-like eye, and then getting loose with the fur. Because as I mentioned, the eye is the most important thing to capture if you want your animal to look real, or at least, you know, have some sort of life. It's all in the eye. And so getting things like the blue undertones and, you know, bleeding in the iris into the pupil and into this black space, you know, that's where you really start to see some dimension. And don't afraid to leave things gray and completely white in some areas, and then you can just have fun with the fur, and you know, that can just be completely loose. But anyways, thank you for watching, and if you have any questions, feel free to comment below and I'll get back to you guys. And yeah, so happy painting. Hope you enjoyed this, and have a great night. Thank you so much.